Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, broadcast out of Monticello, Maine, and Aroostook County. And you'll also hear this show on IPMNation.org Saturday afternoons at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on YouTube, if you visit the campconstitution.net website, you'll see a link to the YouTube channel that we have, and these shows are put up as time permits. And I think this might be our 67th or 68th show since we started back a year and a half ago. And the program is brought to you by Camp Constitution, which runs among other things, a week and a day-long summer camp. And the camp is less than a month away. It is in the beautiful Ridge, New Hampshire, in the southwest part of the state, in Cheshire County. It runs from July 10th, Sunday afternoon, to Sunday morning, July 17th. And we've got a wonderful lineup of speakers, instructors, as well as great field trips and workshops. Some of the speakers include John McManus, former publisher of The New American, and author of a number of books, including Financial Terrorism and Changing Commands, dealing with the United Nations, a very critical perspective, thank you, of the United Nations. Mrs. Chris Ann Hall, constitutional attorney who travels around the country promoting the U.S. Constitution. Reverend Stevie Kreeft, who is our camp favorite from out of New York or New Jersey. And we'll be taking a field trip to Lexington and Concord. That would be Lexington, Massachusetts, the site of the battle site, Lexington Green, Concord Bridge, and some of the attractions around there, the Monroe Tavern, the Hancock Clark House, etc. Now, tonight's guest, I'm very excited about tonight's guest, and a little bit of background here. Camp Constitution has a table at the Mass Hope Homeschool Show in Worcester, Massachusetts. I think we've had 6 or 7 years in a row. Last year and this year, I was able to meet some folks with the C.S. Lewis Foundation, and a great conversation with the ladies running the table, and was delighted to learn that they now have a presence in Massachusetts, in Northfield, a part of the campus or a building, and the C.S. Lewis College is what they're trying to get going. And when I spoke to the woman at the table, I mentioned to her that there used to be a Christian station. The station's still on the air, but there was a host that every November 22nd would play a recording of Professor Peter Kreeft, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, book Between Heaven and Hell. This would be a fictional conversation between Aldous Huxley, C.S. Lewis, and John F. Kennedy, who all died the same day. It was fascinating, probably putting Kennedy in a sort of a secular, nominal Catholic perspective, and then Huxley, who was the author of Brave New World, whose brother was the head of UNESCO, of the United Nations, and I think it was his grandfather or father who was known as of Darwin's bulldog. And then, of course, the great Christian apologist, C.S. Lewis. So our guest is Jim Buchholz, and I'm going to read his very impressive biography here, a brief biography. Jim Buchholz is a professor of mathematics and physics and earned his Ph.D. in astrophysics from the University of California, Riverside, in addition to wrestling and playing soccer. So you could be an athlete and be a genius at the same time, right? During his college days, he performed as a stand-up comic and was once recognized as a top collegiate comedian by the American Collegiate Talent Showcase, formerly the Bob Hope Search for Collegiate Talent. He now produces, writes, directs, and acts in several short films. His first short film, I Saw Her First, played in festivals in 3 different countries. He recently finished his first full-length feature screenplay based off Peter Kreeft's best-selling book, Between Heaven and Hell, a dialogue somewhere between death and with John F. Kennedy, C.S. Lewis, and Aldous Huxley. Dr. Buchholz combines his talents in science and the film industry by creating a very successful college class titled The Physics of Hollywood, He is also presently an active board member of the Riverside International Film Festival. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, tell us a little bit about the C.S. Lewis Foundation, if you could.
Well, I first came involved with the foundation back in the late 90s. I was actually surprised to find out how close it was to my house. I just assumed C.S. Lewis Foundation must be in England, right?
Right.
And it ends up my wife came across it first and first had contact with the foundation. She told me, hey, do you know that they're in Redlands, California? And I thought she must be mistaken. And so we now live in Redlands, California, but we live in a city close to that. And so for years, I started volunteering for the foundation. At one point, my daughter was actually the assistant to the president of the foundation. She worked for that for a while. So we just got involved, and this all happened back in the 90s. And I was heavily involved with the summer institute called Oxbridge that they run at both Oxford and Cambridge universities about every 3 summers. And in fact, I received a sabbatical from the university I teach at to go work with them the first time I did that. And so that's how that's how it just kind of all started for me with working with the C.S. Lewis Foundation. I was a volunteer back in the 90s through, however many times I work at different things and go to different functions.
Now, the C.S. Lewis Foundation is in the process, or it's on sort of the drawing board of having a college in Massachusetts at Northfield. Are you involved in that project at all?
My dean, actually, of my college here at CBU is the vice president of the foundation, and he was the one that was responsible for, or is responsible, I guess, for most of the paperwork in that, most of the, I should say, administrative work, in getting that done and so forth. His name's Gain Aniker, and he's actually the one that will, I often talk to him about it, but I hate to say stuff and get something wrong because he's the one that knows.
Sure.
He knows the one that exact what stage they're at in that. The C.S. Lewis College, though, has always been a major point of the foundation to get this great books college going. And I think the Oxbridge things that happen every 3 years, there are very successful things, and those will continue to go. But yes, they're still always driving to have this university, this C.S. Lewis College built there. The Oxbridge festivals, several hundred people come to those each year, so they're rather big, and actually, believe it or not, they're actually rather big for even Oxford or Cambridge. We almost shut down the city, it seems sometimes. We go there and they're like, we're not used to conferences this big. And that might be surprised to hear about Oxford and Cambridge, but everyone in the city gets to know you because we have huge amounts of bus transportation taking people here and there and there, and we have to coordinate with the city when buses can leave to take someone from Oxford to Cambridge and stuff like that because of the traffic flow of having hundreds of convention people there. So that tends to be one of the more successful ongoing things that's been going on since the 80s. But yes, the college is an ultimate goal of the foundation.
And I would say very much needed, like what we have, where we teach young people and old people alike about the principles of limited government and freedom in the Constitution. Your mission would be to, of course, advance the Christian faith and become a defender of the faith. Well, tell us about your project Between Heaven and Hell. And again, I mentioned when I introduced you that I used to listen to a recording of the book Between Heaven and Hell. It was a lady by the name of Janine Graff, and I can't find her. I went to the station, and nobody remembers any ever hearing it. And I got a hold of, I think it was Peter Kreeft, at least his website, and nobody there seems to know anything about it. I said, man, it was very well done. I mean, the narration, they had John Kennedy's voice down, and C.S. Lewis and Aldous Huxley. So what first motivated you? And then tell us about the project and how the listeners here could help.
Well, what first motivated me was, I literally just thought it was a great concept to start with when I first heard about the book and read it. And Peter Kreeft been a speaker at several C.S. Lewis foundations, and so I did pick up his book one day. I mean, the book was written in the 80s. I didn't read it till the 90s.
And Professor Kreeft is Boston College.
Yes, he's at Boston College. And by the way, he's the ideal person to have written something like this. Not only did he come up with the idea, but he kind of has a really good knowledge of all these people. I mean, he's a philosophy professor, and while Huxley is, a book writer, screenwriter, so all his work is philosophically oriented. Maybe not the same as Peter's, but and then Peter's also Catholic, like the President of the United States. And Peter also lives, like I said, in Boston, which is the Kennedy stomping ground. And on top of all those things, Peter Kreeft's a C.S. Lewis scholar, written many, many books about C.S. Lewis. So he kind of knows all these different worlds that these individuals live in, because he's been part of it. I mean, he's a book author. I think Peter's written like 75 books, so he's a book author. He's a book author like Huxley too. And like I said, Lewis scholar, and he knows the Catholic world, and he lives in Kennedy territory, so to say. So he was the ideal person to write this. And when I first met Peter, I didn't even tell him I'd read the book. I just wanted to get to know him. He was speaking at a C.S. Lewis conference. I think I had lunch with him, and I think then he spoke at another conference, and I had lunch with him again. Still didn't tell him that I'd read this particular book of his, and there was kind of a reason why, because right after I put this book down, Between Heaven and Hell, I immediately thought someone has to make a movie out of this. Mm. Now, I just started making movies, for like theatrical or, festival performances about 9 years ago was my first one. And I felt when I first met him longer ago than that, actually, that I wasn't ready to ask him, hey, let me make this into a movie. And I had to spend a lot of time making my own films, making my own context. I mean, I live in the right place, Southern California, just outside of L.A., and I've gotten heavily in the movie industry, developed a lot of friendships. I have a lot of mentoring. One of my mentors that I've talked about this film is Ralph Winter. If you IMDb Ralph Winter, you'll see that his movies have made in the billions in the theaters. He used to be the major producer for Fox Studios. He did the original first 2 or 3 or 4 X-Men movies, and so he does these blockbuster movies. And I've been talking to him about this movie and told him I got the rights to the book and how we do this. And so I started making contacts over the air. And so finally, after years of knowing Peter, I tell him, hey, I read your book, and this just has to be made into a movie. And so he starts telling me, first of all, I find out that he doesn't have the movie rights. The book publisher owns the movie rights to it. Oh. And so you really have to work through the publisher to get the movie rights. And I also find out that, a lot of other people have thought this would be a great movie too. And it has been optioned, the movie rights been bought by 3 studios before me. And this is what often happens. The studios will, that's a great idea, we should turn that into a book. And they want to buy them out so that no one else can, because you can lock these things down for years. You can buy the movie rights on many contracts and just lock it out for 5 to 7 years and not even do anything, right? You just want to hold on to it. Of course, I'm not doing that, but you can just hold on to it. So studios will do that, kind of put some feelers out there for funding and stuff like that, and then eventually they may let the book go. And this is actually what happens to most books, even bestsellers. By the way, this book out of Peter Kreeft's 75 books that he's written, this is his best-selling book. And
that book is available on Amazon. I imagine it's still in print. I bought a copy, I think, just for a few dollars. So I'd recommend the listeners to get a copy of it.
Yes. So they still sell that.
And let's just hope that most times when a movie's made, they'll say, "Oh, the movie was okay, but the book's better." Maybe people will watch this movie when it's done and say, "Oh, the book's great, but the movie's better."
Well, I actually had this conversation you're talking about with Peter himself, and I was trying to go over the movies where the movies were better than the book, because he as a book writer obviously feels the book's always better than the movie. So we tried to discuss, because he has no problem with me making the movie great, right?
Right.
And so we actually had a discussion one time about movies that actually are better than the books, and we started going over our list, and we couldn't make a long list,
Right.
but he has no problem with me making this better than the book, so that would be great.
Well, I'm sure it will help book sales too. What's very fascinating is that when I mention this topic to folks, and I'm talking about people who are C.S. Lewis aficionados or JFK buffs and et cetera, very few people know that they all died the same day.
Yeah, and it was only about 70 minutes apart for all of them. I mean, it was one right after the other. It was amazing having that. So so Huxley. And Huxley's Jim Morrison named their
the Doors, that's correct.
Doors after his book Doors Perception. So he was a huge influence on a lot of different people, and it was all back page news because the President of the United States had been assassinated. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, and so
right.
that kind of and either one of the C.S. Lewis or Huxley's deaths would have been front page news if it weren't for the President of the United States. So it is kind of missed or lost among a lot of people and so forth.
One of the things about C.S. Lewis is that he is appreciated by Catholics and Protestants alike. In fact, when I first became a professing Christian and would read whatever they can get my hands on, including Mere Christianity, I thought he was a Catholic. And I discovered he wasn't a Catholic, but because he's just so well received. So this wasn't something that would divide Catholics and Protestants, but just the opposite, bring them together.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. In fact, there's a line in Peter's book where Lewis is talking to Kennedy, and he goes, "In many ways, I'm more Catholic than you." And so,
I have an Anglican priest friend that says he's more Catholic than most Catholic priests. So. But my traditional Catholic friends wouldn't agree. But in some cases, he's right because there are a lot of. I'm living in Boston, in a predominantly Catholic. A lot of the Catholics embrace very liberal perspectives. So, and I think isn't Kennedy portrayed as sort of more secular than Catholic? I mean,
yeah, he was more humanist. Yeah.
Right. He was more of he was a nominal Catholic, or we would say a Catholic by default.
Yeah.
A cultural Catholic.
Yeah, definitely Western humanist individual.
So, how is the project going along, and how close are you to doing this?
Well, I mean, as I tell several people on my team, we're making this movie no matter what. I'm not going to let happen what has happened with the studios. I mean, I'm an indie film. This was I know at one point Orion Films had owned the rights to this. They made Hoosiers. They made a lot of big films, Orion Films, and they lost the rights, I think, because they went bankrupt. And they're trying to make a comeback because it's like in your clause, you go bankrupt, you give the rights back, and they sell it to someone else. But I'm not. I mean, I have much more control than a studio as far as things getting done. I can get things done at any price, kind of situation. Now, being a non-studio, a non-major studio, and just independent film, I think one of the reasons why I actually was fortunate enough to get the movie rights was because they've given the shot to the studios more than once, and the studios just never got around to making the film, right? And while the book publishers have the rights who to give the movie rights to, Peter did put in a word for me with them, and so I don't think without his help I ever would have gotten the movie rights to make this. So they kind of know that this isn't going to be a $50 million movie, okay, like they had hoped when they first did it. With that said, I asked Ralph Winter, who I mentioned earlier here, in one of our conversations, I said, why do you think, because he sees this happen all the time. Ralph sees, people buy books and then they fall to the wayside. And it almost happens, by the way, on some really, really big books. And then they come out and they go, oh, man, how come that hung on for so long? I mean, including the Chronicle of Narnia movies. Sony had the rights to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for years and never made that. And they never made it. And that's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so these things just happen. So I kind of asked Ralph, I said, why do you think with this book it's happened? And he gave me some really good advice, and I think I've gotten past that issue. And he said, this book reads more like a play than a movie. You have to figure out how to make it a movie, And I've gone over with Peter Kreeft my changes to make it movie-like. And I've got to be a little careful because I can't say the secrets because there's so many secrets in the movie. And he enjoyed a lot of these ideas. For example, I'll give you an example how much different it is than the book or to make it a movie. The very first line in the book is John F. Kennedy saying, "Where the hell are we?" And that's like the very first line. Well, that line in the movie doesn't even come in the movie until maybe 20, 25 minutes into the movie. Okay, at least 15 minutes into the movie, depending on how we restructure it. So it's
going to be less than just a dialogue. It will be more of a will there be showing Kennedy in the White House, or maybe clips of the assassination, things like that, or is it too early to tell?
So there's going to be a lot of flashbacks, a lot of present day, what's going on Earth, even while they're wherever they are, right? And so a lot of that's in there. With that said, I've introduced several more characters that are in the book, because in the book it's just the three the whole time. And I have introduced several more characters, including people I won't mention that are in the book because I want it to be a surprise. I love it when I get to movies and I see these big surprises and then people need to not tell other people, or the studios keep them really, really quiet, and then you get to the movie and you hear the whole audience just gasp. I remember the last time that happened was in Interstellar. The studios didn't let out the information that Matt Damon was in the movie, and they did it with several characters. Yeah, they didn't let anyone know. And you got to the theater, and this astronaut they were looking for, all of a sudden, halfway through the movie, it's Matt Damon. We're like, what? He's a superstar. Why wouldn't you tell people? It was a secret. And you hear people just gasping in the theater over it.
And then, of course, that in itself gets more people out. A little people knowing it, yeah.
Yeah, I hate it when trailers ruin the movie and tell you, and all the best stuff's in the trailer,
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at your Kickstarter project, and we Camp Constitution will hopefully do something to help. But I was talking to my daughter, maybe they'll give you a walk-on part. I will go, yeah. She's, one of my girls says, that'd be great. I don't know how many walk-ons they have here, but we'll see.
On the walk-on things, we didn't put something like that on the perks because, it's just that's kind of a tougher thing because it is mainly the three main characters, but the other surprise characters we brought in, we're explicitly targeting particular actors to play them.
Of course, yeah.
We've got particular ones that we want for that, and so we're kind of afraid to give a walk-on to someone that we did want.
I would think that some of the Christian actors out there would love to be in this and probably be sort of tripping over themselves to become part of this.
Well, we are hoping because, first of all, the Kickstarter page you brought up, we set up a domain that if you just type in Between Heaven and Hell thefilm.com, it will directly go to it's directly forwarded to the Kickstarter campaign. So that makes it kind of easy to remember when just putting in a URL, just Between Heaven and Hell thefilm.com, and it will take you straight there. And what was I just about to say now? Lost my mind.
No, that's okay. I've lost mine a long time ago. So, I'm very impressed. I look at the characters and the crew, the cast and crew, and you have a lot of young people, and most of them seem to be from the California Baptist University.
Yeah, out here in California, you can get a lot of people doing a lot of in-kind services. and a lot of people, because they want to build their careers. So you get people like, and they look at a project they like, and they say, hey, I want to be part of this. Hey, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this. And because it's good for them, because they're film students. Yes, it's good for their resume, right? It's good for their career, and they're learning the craft, already, 9 to 5 in school, whatever. They're already doing that for 4 years, and they would like to put it to use. And so, yes, so I have several people I've worked with, and I've started working with these people, these students you mentioned. Many of them are students on other projects. In fact, my last project that I'm just now sending out to festivals, I had students from 4 different universities in Southern California work on it. And essentially, everyone did it for free. I had a crew of like 20 people shooting this film, and everybody but my lead actor was free, because they all wanted to do it. This was a project. People got interested. They thought, hey, that's a good idea. That's a good idea for a movie. And so then we had to have interviews and kind of auditioning and stuff like that, asking other people, who do you think would be good for this? Who do you think would be good for that? And people just want, there's several people that just want to make films. I mean, that's what you're going to school for, filmmaker. It's hard to make it in this industry. So Southern California is the right place to be for that. 3 of the top 5 film schools in the country are within, 50 miles of where I'm at.
And you have lots of opportunities too for people who want to do this. So,
yeah.
How can we only have a few minutes left? How can listeners help with the project?
Well, go to betweenheavenandhell.com. I better get that right. Betweenheavenandhellthefilm.com. Sorry about that. Betweenheavenandhellthefilm.com, and donate. We would like to build it as fast. We just started, but we need to build it as fast as we can, and so forth. I have other levels. If you scroll all the way bottom, you'll see a 3-level program of how, here's the money that's going to go for Kickstarter, and then I have 2 other levels that have to do with investors and so forth, because we really do want named faces. We want great SAG actors with named faces, and that in many movies is where most of your money ends up going. You can get all the in-kind services people you want. You can get all the people in the industry that just want to make a movie. If you want a face, a name to go with your movie, there's where your money goes, right? And so I have investors that are willing to get me the face. You know what I mean? The faces I need, the names I need, and that's level 2 after this. This Kickstarter program takes care of a lot of the crew, the rentals, the equipment, the legal and locations and stuff like that. So we're trying to take care of that. So, and we're giving some good stuff away. So there's a good chance, the movie blows up and then someone's name's on the movie, that donated to the Kickstarter campaign. They can say, I was part of that movie, And that's one of the perks is, your name in the credits at the end of the movie, kind of a thing like that. You can be an associate producer too. We put a price tag on there to be associate producer of the film, and we have like a limited number of those and so forth. So this will all greatly help, and we've got some great prizes, by the way, that the foundation and Peter Kreeft and Halpo have all given us that you'll see there, autographed books, a stay at C.S. Lewis's home. That's something they don't do anyway. That's just something I set up with Foundation to where you can set it up to go stay at his house and so forth. And so there's some nice perks on there for people that want to help with this film. And we just hope people want to help with the film because they like the idea and they think
it's the right thing to do. Well, right. We're out of time. I want to thank you for your. And we'll have you back on as the project develops. You'll get my email address. Keep me sort of in the loop, and we'll do what we can to help. And God bless. And thank you for listening. You're listening to Camp Constitution Radio on WBCQ The Planet. God bless.
Thank you very much.